Nutrition coaching is the fastest growing career in the health and fitness space. And there are 5 main approaches that nutrition coaches are using with their clients. And today I'm going to explain them. And make sure to watch until the end of this video where I fill you in on a unique coaching strategy that has helped me make nearly $1 million as a nutrition coach. Let's start with number 1, habit-based coaching. Building healthy habits are the key to long-term success for our nutrition client. Because while going on a diet can be helpful to get a weight loss result, without a solid foundation of healthy habits, keeping that weight loss is going to be a challenge. And this is why a habit-based approach has risen in popularity in the last few years. Popularized by nutrition experts, but also by companies like Precision Nutrition. A habit-based approach focuses on repeating small daily habits and actions. These small actions will turn into habits that when you build on over time, eventually lead to the client living a healthier lifestyle. For example, if your client has the goal of weight loss, you might start them off with this habit: eating a palm-sized serving of protein at every meal. Once they master that habit, you can start to increase the protein or focus on a new goal altogether, like preparing their own food 1 batch meal per week. And not all of these habits will be objective. Some of them can be based on feelings, like listening to hunger and fullness cues. This approach is intended to provide a more holistic, long-term alternative to traditional dieting. But like all of the strategies and approaches we're going to talk about today, there are some pros and cons to a habit-based approach. So let's start with some of the pros. The first one being that long-term sustainable change. When clients are solidifying the actions and habits it takes to achieve a result, there's a good chance that they're going to have the skills they need to keep those results. Hopefully through this process, they're going to feel empowered to live a healthier lifestyle long after their time with you. As a coach, I know, yes, reaching your initial goal is fantastic, but the real benefit to my clients is going to be the long-lasting habits and the lifestyle changes they made to get to that goal. And that feels like the ultimate win for me because that means I've made real life long-term impact on my clients. Second pro, your clients focus on taking action. Instead of focusing on all the things your clients can't do or can't eat, a habit-based approach empowers your clients to focus on what they can do in small, meaningful ways. Having small wins and things they accomplish each day is going to increase their autonomy and confidence in this process. Now, while this all sounds amazing, there are some drawbacks to this approach. Number 1, slow or no results. Surprisingly, one of the biggest downsides of a habit-based approach is that your client needs to develop habits. And developing these habits can take a long time, especially if your client is starting from square one. This could take weeks, months, or sometimes even years before your client sees meaningful change. And this is if your client is motivated or even sticking to the things they're supposed to be doing, which can be really problematic because nutrition coaching is a results-based business. Your clients are paying you to achieve some sort of goal, like weight loss, for example. And for our clients that are paying us to help them achieve that goal, spending too much time on small habits that may not lead to results may make them feel like coaching isn't worth it. The second con to habit-based coaching is that it's hard to systemize. The habit-based approach revolves around a custom plan for each individual client, which on the coach's end requires more follow-up and more work. And you can't necessarily use the same approach with each client, leaving you spinning your wheels and constantly doing things differently, which means you'll get less consistency with your results and do more work. Now, building habits is super important, but in my experience, the best approach is going to be some combination of the right structure, getting your clients tracking, and then filling that structure with the right habit. You're going to learn more on how to do that later in the video, but for now, let's move on to number 2, intuitive eating. Intuitive eating has completely exploded in the last few years in the nutrition coaching space. Intuitive eating is not necessarily a nutrition structure, and it's definitely not a diet, but in essence, it's the practice of listening to your body and eating what feels right for you. This is typically done through listening to your hunger and your fullness cues, and by choosing foods that make you feel good and nourish your body, and respecting your emotions by finding ways to cope with difficult feelings without using food. Or with using food. It's all about awareness. Now, here's the important thing to understand about intuitive eating. It's not a weight loss diet. In fact, intuitive eating is sort of like the rage against dieting and dieting culture, which proponents actually claim is one of the reasons why our society doesn't naturally eat according to our hunger and fullness cues. This approach is very popular with people who've been chronically over dieting or have a history of disordered eating to help them reconnect with those hunger and fullness cues and learn to eat a healthy, well-balanced diet without restriction or rules. Now, if body composition changes happen as a byproduct of that, great, but it's not the intention. Let's talk about some pros and cons of this approach. Starting with the pros, just like habit-based coaching, intuitive eating is going to help you build lifelong sustainable habits. As one focuses on tuning into their body for more hunger and fullness cues, you start to get a better sense of what you need to be eating for long-term success. And this is done through deciphering through true hunger and emotional reasons for eating. This approach is all about awareness, which leads us to our second pro, which is fostering a more healthy, positive relationship with your body and with food. Without food rules and the idea that there's no such thing as a good food or a bad food, intuitive eating can be a welcome shift in perspective for those who have chronically dieted or find themselves feeling guilty or ashamed of eating certain foods that dieting culture has deemed not appropriate or bad for you. However, there are cons to this approach. Number one, intuitive eating does not guarantee weight loss or body composition results, which is the entire point, but there are a lot of coaches out there claiming that it will help their clients lose weight, which you need to understand wasn't what intuitive eating was designed for. Many clients will actually gain weight through this process, especially when they're first implementing it. Now, the second con is that in order for your clients to implement intuitive eating, you're going to need to have some mindset training. A large part of intuitive eating is going to be focusing on your client's mindset around food, which isn't going to be taught in a traditional nutrition coaching certification. And depending on where your clients are with their own mental health and health history, you may not be the most qualified person to help your client. So that's intuitive eating. Let's move on to number 3, which is meal plans. The meal plan strategy is when a nutrition coach gives their clients a meal by meal plan to follow. It tells them the exact foods to eat in the exact amounts. For your clients, this means taking the guesswork out of what to eat, which in most cases means your clients are going to achieve outstanding results when they actually follow it. This is done through typically creating a PDF or a spreadsheet with exact foods and recipes of what to eat throughout the day. Sometimes this is fit to the individual exactly, sometimes it's just a rough calorie estimate, and sometimes it isn't individualized at all, which is unfortunate, but we'll talk about that later. Nowadays, most of this coaching is done virtually with many meal plan softwares like Eat This Much, which will automatically create meal plans for your clients through the app, creating much less work on the coach's end. Here are the pros and cons of a meal plan based approach. Number 1, quick results. When you take that human element out of executing on a plan and all the stuff like creating habits and teaching them how to eat, which can take time, if you give them the exact foods to eat and it falls in line with the scientific principles of them getting results, they're going to get results, and they're going to get results fast. There's not much room for error. The second pro is that this is a service that a lot of clients want. Have you ever heard a potential client say something like, "Oh, I just wish you could cook for me," or "Can you tell me exactly what I should be eating?" Our clients want to reach their goals quickly with minimal work, and a meal plan takes that decision making off of your client's plate and streamlines the path towards their goals. Although there are some drawbacks, and let's talk about those. Number 1, meal plans are not sustainable. The problem with meal plans is that it tells your clients what to eat, but it doesn't teach them how to eat. And while they might see great results when they follow the plan, they aren't going to know how to continue making progress or keep their progress without one. And not to mention, the progress only happens when the client is actually sticking to the meal plan, and adherence to meal plans is shockingly low. It's not uncommon for clients to get bored of the meal plan and stop it altogether, or continuing to ask you for a new one, which brings me to my second drawback. It's very time consuming. If you are manually creating your clients' meal plans, researching recipes, and coming up with the correct foods and calorie and macronutrient amounts to fit their goals, and manually make adjustments anytime a client asks for a change or to switch something, it's going to be taking a lot of time for each client, time that you could be spending elsewhere in your business. Now, you can mitigate this using a meal planning app like Eat This Much, which is what we use in the Dr. Mark method. This auto-generates custom meals depending on your client's nutrition plan and macro targets. It makes it super easy for both the coach and client. If you plan on implementing a meal planning strategy and you want to check out Eat This Much, you can access a 14-day free trial by going to the first link in the description below. Now, one important distinction I want to make here about meal plans is that by telling your clients exactly what to eat, this is the sort of thing that can get you into trouble if something bad happened. If you are extremely prescriptive and told your clients exactly what to eat and there's a health concern, you could be liable. So in my experience, it's best to use these resources as inspiration or suggested meals as you teach your clients how to eat, not just blindly follow them. Meal plans are great for getting results when done properly, but they do lack in the department of long-term habit and lifestyle change. But there is an approach that does both of these things. Let's move on to number 4, flexible dieting. Flexible dieting, or also sometimes known as if it fits your macros, is a strategy of tracking your food intake based on predetermined calorie and macronutrient targets. The goal of flexible dieting or macro tracking is to provide that structure while allowing flexibility in food choice, in contrast to more rigid approaches like meal plans or rule-based diets. Research has shown that flexible dieting is associated with a lower body mass index, reduced food anxiety, better weight maintenance, and improved adherence over time. And here's how it does that. A flexible dieting plan is delivered by daily calorie and macronutrient goals, where clients create meals based on those goals and track towards the targets as they eat. A flexible dieting approach typically also uses habit-based strategies. When done properly, this flexible approach is also going to help you build habits to fill that structure, like small habits of eating protein every meal or setting a hydration goal to help clients reach their body composition goals and become more educated around their food. Let's move on to pros and cons. The first one being structure and sustainability. Flexible dieting has that set structure. You know what you need to do and how you need to eat in order to reach your goals. And you're also building habits in the meantime, meaning if your food tracking app goes down, you just eat similarly. Leading to our second pro, which is building that healthy and positive mindset around food. With flexible dieting, there's no foods off limits. There's no good or bad foods. There's just better or worse choices in the context of your goals. This approach is especially helpful for clients that have a history of crash dieting or excluding certain foods. They are amazed that they can still have fun treats and go out for social dinners while making progress. Over time, this creates a more healthier, balanced relationship with food. And although I'm a proponent of this approach, there are some cons. The first one being there's reliance on food tracking. Relying too much on an app or tracking what you eat to inform what you should eat can override your body's natural signals of hunger and fullness. For most people, tracking should not be a long-term strategy. It isn't something you're gonna do forever. It's an educational tool and strategy to get a result rather than a lifelong practice. In my professional opinion, the flexible dieting approach is going to be the most effective when coaching nutrition clients because it marries the two things that you need to be successful in this job, both in the short term and the long term, which is going to be those habits and results. This isn't just here are your macros, get to it. When done properly, it's prescriptive numbers based on where you're at now and where you want to go with your goals. And here are some realistic targets, and let me teach you how to eat within them. It can be super effective, but we have one strategy left, which is number 5, food rules based. This is when a coach sets specific guidelines around what a client can and can't eat, or where specific foods are limited or encouraged. Any popular diets fit this model if you think about keto or carnivore or plant-based. Now with these diets, your clients can still track their food levels, but many of the popular ones don't believe that that is important. And just like with meal plans, a lot of the clients that are attracted to this approach like the simplicity. There are very clear instructions on what to eat and what to avoid, which is a helpful structure for some. Okay, first let's do pros if we have to. The first one is structure. You give clients specific do's and don'ts for their diet. It adds structure and it eliminates decision-making and the decision-making fatigue. Clients are typically attracted with the idea that they can see results by just avoiding certain foods or eliminating something. The second pro is that these diets often offer an element of community. There are entire recipe websites and YouTube channels and Facebook groups dedicated to groups of people, keto, paleo, carnivore. And in these groups, people find a community of people just like them doing the same thing. This offers motivation and can help people stay on track. Now let's move on to the cons. The first one being is that in most cases, they are unsustainable. These type of diets offer no or limited flexibility, meaning that eating out or going to a family dinner is nearly impossible without bringing your own food. Not to mention it can get boring because typically you're eating the same foods over and over again. And if someone does reach their goal, they typically think it's because of the food rules, not the underlying scientific principles that got them there. The other main con here is that it can create a negative mindset around food. When someone is telling you that certain foods are good or bad, it can create anxiety around what happens when a client falls off track, creating disordered eating habits and the cycle of being on and off. In my experience, there are much better ways to approach dieting and nutrition coaching, which we talked about early in the video. So that's it, folks. Those are the 5 ways nutrition coaching is happening right now. And in my experience, the nutrition coaches that are crushing it use a combination of a target-based, flexible approach to set the structure and some of those habits and internal cues to fill that structure, and then meal plans and suggestions questions around how to eat as the client learns what their food is made of and gets some results. Now, as great as all those tips are, if you're really serious about starting a nutrition coaching business, the next thing I'll have you do, check out this video right here. Today, you learned all about how nutrition coaching is happening. One thing I left out is how to check in with clients. You're gonna learn how to do exactly that in the video right here. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.